Hello and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to the vlog, and welcome back to Cornwall on a kind of grey and, well, I mean it's warm, it's very warm. I'm very glad for the air conditioning, but it is a late spring day. We're very, very close to summer. And, well, it's good, it's fine. I'm in the car, I've got air conditioning, which is something you don't have on a motorbike. You're either too hot, too cold, too sweaty, or too wet? Did we already do wet? I mean, we can always do wet twice, because on a motorbike, there's always something getting into your pants, and it's usually rainwater. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. I am, once again, foraging for food, because petrol is expensive, and I may as well do two things at the same time. And I was just like, you know what? I will keep you guys up to speed on what is going on with the channel. And also I thought, I do a lot of driving around in the car, doing vlogs and stuff. You guys haven't actually seen it from the outside. So I took a picture of it the other day. I was just like, I will take a picture of the car. And here it is. As you may note, it's also taken f8, because if you do have a DSLR, a digital camera, one of the settings you can do if you don't know what you're doing and don't want to have your camera on automatic is F8 and go. Set it to aperture priority, whether it's a DSLR, a mirrorless camera, or a bridge camera. Set it to aperture priority, and then set your aperture to F8, and everything else is going to be automatic for the people. But yeah, it's kind of just being a readiness alert level 1. But again, that's not really what I wanted to talk about. That's just an incidental to today's vlog, because Drumbones in the comments of one of the Stranded Deep videos was like, oh no, it wasn't Stranded Deep. It was Unravel. It was the game with the little yarn man, the little Dark Souls of platformers with the physics puzzles that occasionally break and just make you go, oh no, little yarn man, what are you doing? And Drumbones was like, oh Bean, oh chum, you do a lot of references to Labyrinth, a lot of references. Like every video there's a reference to Labyrinth, and I'm like, yeah, it's a good film. It's a good film. I do a lot of other references as well. Anytime you hear, he jumped out of the window. Why would anybody do that? That's a reference to the Bourne Identity in Paris, where the assassin jumps out of the window. He gets stabbed with a biro and then he jumps out the window. I mean, there's a lot of references. I should probably go through a video one day and try and pick them all out, because even for me, there's too much. That is to say, I really love films. I love films, absolutely love them. Why do you not do a film podcast? You are of the right sort of, thing. You could always do a film podcast talking about films. Yeah, it's an oversaturated market, and nobody wants another dude like me talking about films. Especially when it comes to things like Star Trek, because I have opinions on it. But the other thing I have opinions on is, well, it's kind of an interesting one, because Labyrinth is an excellent film to quote, an excellent film to watch. And you may hear one of the quotes that I drop quite often, or one of the references I drop quite often, is the up or down. She chose down, she chose down. That is really good if you're playing a video game and you've got two choices, left or right, up or down. And then you just drop that little reference, because when you're doing gameplay, your brain's kind of partly focused on the gameplay, partly focused on narration, and you don't want dead air. There's no point at which you want to just not be talking and leave the audience a little confused. You don't want people to be like, what is going on? Has the audio stopped? Did he forget to talk? Has he forgot to key his mic? Am I going insane? Is YouTube having a funny 5 moments? I mean, there's a bunch of questions, so dead air is something I'm keen to avoid, which is why I'm continuously talking to you right now. And film references are a really good way of just filling that dead air. But yeah, I was having a conversation with someone, or a little chat, in my brother's Twitch stream, one probably a couple of months ago now. And there's someone in there, and in the chat, and they were born, I think they were born after 2000. And they were saying that they didn't watch old movies. They don't watch old movies. Oh, what to you counts as an old movie? Because for me, Metropolis, which I think is 1928, directed by Fritz Lang, starring Bridget Helm, that's an old movie, one which I have watched and quite enjoy, and continue to enjoy as they restore more and more sections of the film. But yeah, so to me, a movie from the 20s is kind of what we would call an old film. In fact, the Ealing comedies, things like the Titfield Thunderbolt, I think that's the right. Is that the right? Oh, let's just say Carry On Screaming. There we go. There's a comedy for you. I love those old films because when you see things like the B-roll, the background shots, you get these panning shots or these static shots of England, Great Britain as it was in like the 60s and the 70s, and there's a lot less in the way of traffic and a lot less in the way of like, but people are different, people are wearing different clothes, and things like the shop fronts and things are very different. I find old films fascinating, partly because of just the way they are and the stories that they tell, and partly because it gives an insight into an older way of life. But to them, they said, oh, I do not like watching old films before 2000 because the CG isn't very good. And I was like, you what, mate? The computer-generated imagery of a film older than 2000 is not very good. I don't understand that whole sentence. And I don't understand that whole sentence because a lot of films prior to 2000, like the 80s and things, didn't use CG. They used things like matte paintings for backdrops, and puppets, and forced perspective, and mirrors. And it was a very different time, a very different way of making film. And one of the things I really do enjoy are 80s films. I love 80s films. There are a bunch of films that you should probably watch. Things like The Goonies. If you've never watched The Goonies before and you were a child, watch it. Go and watch it. It is basically that adventure that you always wanted to go on as a kid. There's pirate ships, there's caves, there's like slip and slides, there's everything. Everything is in the Goonies that you could possibly want. And it's got a bunch of actors like Josh Brolin who are in the film. And you'll be like, oh, I recognize that guy from the 80s. He was the man with the big chin who had the gauntlet, Snappy Gauntlet Boy. He's Snappy Gauntlet Boy from the Marvel Universe. Yeah, he is. And then you watch him and he's a lot younger in the Goonies. Other films that you can watch from the 80s. Well, actually, no, let's just say why I like watching films from the 80s. Specifically the 80s. Is because the Cold War was on. The Cold War was on, and everyone was like, oh, there's this threat of being nuked tomorrow. The world could end tomorrow, and it was a very real threat. Something that we don't really have these days. Well, I mean, give it 6 months and we'll find out. But something we don't have these days. So the feeling was very different, and films weren't all gritty and realistic. They weren't all there for the shaky camera. The shaky camera came in early 2000s with a TV series called 24, where they just turned the image stabilizing off on the camera and just shook it around for a bit. It's something that needs to go away. Lock it off. Lock the camera off or put it on a dolly. I don't know. But yeah, gritty and realistic after 2000 is the way it all went. And it's kind of exhausting. During the 80s, there was the threat of nuclear annihilation. And you know what? We needed a bit of escapism. Literally, films that were written to take you out of your daily life for, a tight 90 minutes. And that was good. It meant the writing had to be really good. Krull aside, Krull's still a good film. I still enjoy watching it. You got things like War Games, which, okay, probably not a good analogy after the nuclear war thing, but really good. Ali Sheedy is probably the main character in that film. I mean, she is the one that has all the abilities. She can swim and she can ride the bike and everything. But Matthew Broderick is like the main dude, the hacker dude who accidentally... Yeah, go and watch it. War Games. It's a brilliant, brilliant film. I love it. Short Circuit. Again, another really, really good film. And where's the CG in it? Well, there isn't really. There's a bit of like optical work and like people have to paint lasers and stuff on things, but really, it's all puppets. And Labyrinth. Jim Henson's Muppet Workshop. You know what else they did? Farscape. Yep, they did Farscape. So the zenith of their work was a really good TV series, Fun in Space. I mean, you can't get over good puppetry. CG is fine, but when I watched The Hobbit, like the first Hobbit film, and there was a bit with this dying hedgehog thing, but you could tell it was CG, and I was just like, well, why do I care about it? It's literally just a Blender render. What am I feeling here? Where if they'd have actually made it a puppet and you could tell it was like on set with the actor, I'd have been a little bit more invested, old chum. So yeah, I think old films, the stories are much better, they're much more uplifting, and the work that goes into them was just a lot more. There's just a lot more work. Also back on Labyrinth, there is a Star Trek connection. Of course there's a Star Trek connection, but there is a Star Trek connection. Do you remember the fire dance scene with little fire creatures, the fire puppets? And of course nobody watching this who hasn't seen Labyrinth will be just like, I don't know what you're talking about, mate. It's a dance sequence with puppets, and it was choreographed by Gates McFadden. Gates McFadden? That's a weird name. Yes, she played Dr. Beverly Crusher on Star Trek The Next Generation. Seriously, the Doctor is a dance choreographer, if you didn't know that. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people watching this will probably already know that little nugget of information. Are there any other... Oh yeah, Lost Boys. Oh my god, yes, Lost Boys. If you want a fun vampire film, watch Lost Boys. I do quote that one quite a lot, but I'm guessing that's one that a lot of people haven't seen. Yeah, that is amazing. Again, puppets and like, I guess less puppets. Well, no, there probably is, but a lot of like prosthetics and things that they add to people in order to make them explode with blood. It's beautiful, and it is kind of a vampire comedy, dark comedy, I guess. I'm just watching the cyclist just jet across the outside of the road. It's a big lad on a big bike, but still, we got a ton and a half. If he stops, we have a lot of momentum to stop. So, you know. Yeah, so 80s films, I would wholly recommend them. I would wholly recommend just finding them. Some of them are just terrible. But then some of the best ones you already know. Things like, it was Aliens. Aliens was 80s. I think Alien was late 70s, and Aliens was early 80s. This lad is going very slow. So, yeah, a lot of the classic films. And the thing about Aliens is that you're not rendering a lot of CG. You're not rendering CG. You're using models for ships, and you're using puppets for the alien and things, and it makes it much more scary, much more gritty and realistic. And that's the thing. You can have gritty and realistic as long as everything is on set. When it's obvious CG rendering, it's just like, it's not quite there. You get a disaster movie where an asteroid hits the planet, and it's just like, cool, but the water doesn't look that good, and the building destruction looks a bit too much like a video game, and yeah, it's just not good. We're gonna jet past this person. So yeah, there is a case for old films, and there is also a case for watching specifically 80s films. I'm just trying to think of anything off the top of my head that you should absolutely watch, apart from Short Circuit, War Games, Labyrinth. There probably is, but I'm driving and it's really... Oh, the Goonies. It's really hard to not die and give you film recommendations, because things like this. Yes, indicate forever. We'll use your blinkers. No, I'm not going this way. I'm TikToking this way. Yeah. if you got any old 80s film recommendations, I mean, I can't promise that I haven't already seen it, but for each other, I guess. Definitely, what is that lad doing there? Definitely leave them in the comments below. And if you do get some of the more obscure references, well, feel free to point them out. But wow, there's a lot of people out today for a Sunday. Gonna give it the business. There we go. But yeah, I'm not apologising for the references. Some of them are classic. I was just trying to drop a Metropolis reference, but it's a silent movie, so there's not a lot. It's Bridget Helm, she plays the metal mother. Yeah, okay. So we're at our destination. Ooh, Kawasaki Ninja. I had the baby Ninja. So yeah, we're at our destination. So I'm going to say I will leave it there for the time being. If you love these little vlogs or like these little vlogs, just leave a like. Leave a subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and you can click the little bell if you want notifications. If you don't want notifications, don't click the little bell. And I'll tell you what, as I square up on this parking space, I'll catch you next time. You remind me of the babe with the power of voodoo. You do remind me of the babe. You can't sing anymore because otherwise copyright strikes. They will happen.